Chaos is everywhere. From the moment one borns to the end of their life, everything is characterized by chaos and uncertainty. It is the default of life. Order, on the other hand, is not something that is default. It is something that requires work to achieve and even more work to maintain. For example, when a child is born, it cries by default, and throughout the early childhood makes a show of the aggressive, chaotic tendencies. But as he grows older, the conscious awareness and self-control enables that child to become peaceful and orderly, at least more orderly than the childhood days. But still, some form of chaos is inevitable throughout the human life. In his book 12 Rules for Life, Dr. Jordan Peterson explained 12 habits that serve as an antidote for chaos. He explained these rules in a religious fashion in order to emphasize the importance of the rules. And for sure, following the rules will enable you to bring more happiness and peace to yourself and to the world. In this video, I'll be explaining these 12 rules in detail. If you're new here, consider subscribing so you won't miss other interesting videos like this. Rule number 1. Stand up straight with your shoulders back. The dominance hierarchy is one of the most ancient and important phenomena for most species that has been there for at least 350 million years. That's way before humans or even dinosaurs. Jordan uses lobsters as an example to explain the true reality of group dynamics, social status, and dominance. In much of the animal kingdom, the ones on the top ranks of the hierarchy get most of the good stuff, which means better food, better mates, and better space. On the bottom of the hierarchy lies misery, stress, and a shorter lifespan. It is definitely not a place to be in. That is why learning to stand up for yourself and taking responsibility is sort of a religious duty. Some people are by nature generous, empathic, and compassionate. Some others believe that any form of aggression is bad. Such people have a hard time standing up for themselves. Their inability or unwillingness to act out with aggression serves as an encouragement for further bullying and manipulation. What is even more toxic is that the victim breeds resentment deep inside instead of releasing the rightful anger. When more and more resentment piles up, it can easily create monsters out of decent, virtuous people. That is why tolerating negative behavior is as much quote-unquote sinful as perpetuating negative behavior. Now the thing is that displaying weakness and a bad posture increases the chances of bullying, manipulation, and other forms of negative behaviors. Why is that? Because in general, people judge a book by its cover. And why shouldn't that be the case when it is so effective in social and status dynamics? This is simple biology. A slouching posture indicates defeat, stress, shame, and weakness. Such a posture indicates that you are not of much value to yourself and to the culture you live in. Stand up straight with your shoulders back. And this does not mean only changing yourself physically, but it also includes changing yourself metaphysically, which means to take responsibility and a willingness to be brave and vulnerable for the right reasons. Rule number 2. Treat yourself like someone you're responsible for caring. It is not virtuous to be victimized by a bully, even if that bully is oneself. The gift of consciousness is no doubt very alluring, but it also comes with a burden. A burden that is not on all living things but only on us humans. That burden is our ability to differentiate between right and wrong. You see, a lion doesn't give a damn about the lamb it hunts. It does so because it is hungry and because hunting is instinctive to it. But when it comes to humans, our actions are not merely a function of our instincts. Our self-awareness and morality has to play a great role in the actions that we partake. Of course, this is necessary because otherwise we'd become a bunch of crazy psychopaths, ready to destroy the world in the blink of an eye. But a consequence of this phenomena is that we often become guilt-ridden creatures looking for some holy water to wash away our sins. We even try to punish ourselves subconsciously. This is the reason why many people are able to take care of their pets much more better than they take care of themselves. Also, self-care is not an easy task in and of itself, and it often involves doing uncomfortable things for the good of the individual. For example, only about 30% of patients take their medications in a proper and administered way. Therefore, we must learn to respect ourselves, sympathize with ourselves, and most importantly, discipline ourselves, just like a father figure. Rule number 3. Make friends with those who want the best for you. Friends, eh? Creating great and productive friendships is one of the most difficult things. And this is because most people go for what is easy and not what is worthwhile. Making friends with people who have destructive tendencies is easy, especially if you are young. It's easier to drink, party, and indulge in all forms of negative behaviors without calling each other out on such destructive actions. It's easier to associate yourself with people who are below you, because then you won't feel bad about yourself and won't be judged. But you should understand that those below you are there for a reason. They have bad habits that you'll catch on. Even if you think you want to save the damned and make them better, you will still end up lost and resentful. And this is because you cannot help someone unless they are willing to help themselves first. You will easily become a prey for people with a victim mentality. They will take from you to the point that they'll suck you dry. And their laziness will prove fatal for you as well, just like it has been for them. On the other hand, making friends with people who are better than you is going to seem difficult. You will feel bad about yourself, at least in the beginning. Envy may try to kick in as well, but only if you allow it to do so. You will have to step up your game, produce results in life, or you may be left behind. Most importantly, you will be judged, and to bear the judgment you will need humility. But if you are willing to have that humility, you'll be lifted up. True winners always want the best for their friends, because they believe that teamwork creates the dream work. Make friends with other winners and be a winner. Rule number 4. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. We all have an internal critic embedded into our heads. For most people, this critic is always making judgments about them by using comparison. But this is a flawed strategy, and it is a recipe for misery and unhappiness. Why is that? Well, first, every person is unique and different and has been through different paths which were different in nature. Secondly, all of life is not a race, but a marathon. This means that in life there are many games to be played. The game of career, the game of relationships, the game of family, the game of self-realization, and so on. Comparing one of these games to another person's game is, perhaps, quite a stupid thing to do. A person in your office may outperform you and get that promotion that you wanted, but you may not know that his kids hate him at home, or his wife cheats on him. And let's suppose someone seems to be exceptional at almost every game of life. Well, even then it is not worth it to compare yourself to such a person, because you don't know or see the underlying reasons, struggles, and sacrifices, or even support that enabled that person to succeed. Did you went through the same? Probably not. So what's the alternative? Redirect your internal critic inward and take stock. See where you are in life and why you are at that place. Pay laser-sharp attention and understand everything. Be humble and realistic when you undertake such a process. After you know exactly where you stand in your career, relationships, and other good games of your life, and understanding why you're there, take an aim for where you want to go. You see, we're biologically wired to do this since the times of the hunter-gatherers. We must aim at something. We must have targets, and we have to be hungry enough as well. But all of this does not mean that taking an aim is simple. In fact, it is very complicated, especially in today's world, where we are constantly distracted and our value hierarchies are all messed up. In simple words, we need to be clear about what things we truly value in life, and then to bring our sharp focus towards those things and take an aim. Everything else has to become irrelevant. By giving ourselves up to such a process of self-discovery and taking an aim, we automatically stop comparing ourselves with others. Rule number 5. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. Resentment is like a slow poison. It eventually kills people's soul and their sense of morality. But where does resentment come from? It comes from allowing behaviors and transgressions that are not acceptable to you. It comes from being a pushover, from not standing up for yourself or what you believe is right. This means you are for some reason afraid or unwilling to discipline your child. And the unacceptable behavior of such a child will breed resentment into you that will spoil the relationship. This is what this rule is mainly about. Although it seems to focus on good parenting and disciplining of children, it also applies to other relations as well. When you allow your children to misbehave and let them get away with such a behavior, you're sending the message that such a behavior will be acceptable in the real world. This is extremely dangerous for the child, as when he grows up, he will not be able to develop into a well-mannered adult. And then nature and society will do the job that the parents did not do, and it will be much harsher and unforgiving. Similarly, if you do not reward children or even people in general for good behavior, they'll be less likely to repeat that good behavior. There are a lot of simple ways for rewarding good behavior, such as giving a sense of appreciation verbally or non-verbally. Rewards can also be things such as gifts or a giant scoop of ice cream. Keep in mind that the goal is to reinforce good and positive behavior. The child has to feel that what she has done is good, and by adopting such behavior, she will be loved and rewarded. Rule number 6. Set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. The thing about life is that it brings suffering, and that suffering can easily expose us to the dangers of nihilism and despair. It can even compel us to question reality itself. What is the meaning of all this needless suffering? Why my efforts are rendered useless? Life is inherently evil, and so on. And such questioning can quickly become dangerous. We start to make judgments about society and humanity based on our own negative experiences. Without setting our own house in order, we start to criticize and condemn the world. In such moments, a person has great tendency to choose the path of destruction. But there is another side to suffering as well, which is intense personal responsibility. It assumes reality to be just and fair, even though it may seem somewhat irrational. But in order to equalize the suffering, it focuses on the improvement of being. The reason why such an assumption is better is because it makes correction of our own errors much easier. It helps us look inward and see that our efforts were, in fact, flawed. Or even if we fail to find those flaws or recognize our own mistakes that caused our suffering, we still take responsibility for correcting our situation. We fix ourselves up. We focus on what is under our control, instead of cursing reality and being for all our sufferings. Rule number 7. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. We all have impulses of different nature that are constantly seeking to be gratified. And there are a lot of ways and paths to seek such gratification. But as humans, the ways we can make use of these impulses are radically different from other animals. And this thing brings two more factors into the equation. These two things are sacrifice and immediate gratification. The idea of sacrifice is simply giving up the pleasures of today for greater rewards in the future. It can also be used for self-preservation in some cases. Immediate gratification, on the other hand, does not care about the future. It wants what it wants right then and there without any conscious thought of what the future might hold. Back in the days of the hunter-gatherers, the family would slaughter a mammoth, and after they feasted on some of it, they used to save the rest for later days in case the days won't be good. This made sure that they were never hungry even in days when no food was to be found. This is the concept of delayed gratification and sacrifice. On the other hand, if they would have done what is expedient, which means eating all of it, and which means doing things under the influence of pure impulse, they would have starved themselves to death. Doing things in a meaningful manner means doing them with conscious thought and consideration. It means doing things with the future in mind and with a clear value hierarchy. It means doing the things that ensure the betterment of being. Jordan says that the betterment of being must be the God value for living a happy and meaningful life. When we do each and everything with this value as our main priority, we experience health and tremendous success. And make no mistake, doing things for the betterment of being is not at all the path of least resistance. In fact, it inevitably requires some sort of sacrifice and work, but it is meaningful and much more rewarding than doing what is expedient. Rule number 8. Tell the truth, or at least don't lie. Saying what is true is a sign of courage and strength. A political person, on the other hand, is simply a person who has known himself to be powerless, and a lying person has no real power whatsoever. He is not at all a force of nature. Now, both of these two aspects are true in the reverse order as well. If you find yourself abandoned and confused, try telling the truth. It will alleviate your suffering and bring more force and power to your world. Similarly, if someone powerful starts to lie and bend reality, he is essentially sabotaging his long-term success. You see, lying is easy and beneficial in the beginning, but over time it becomes hard to maintain so many different realities. Also, it destroys self-esteem. Truth, on the other hand, is difficult in the beginning, but over time it gets easy, builds a solid reputation, and a healthy self-esteem. No doubt in some cases you'll find that speaking the truth is absolutely not affordable, because it will turn your world around. In such cases, remain silent, because silence is power. Avoid the temptation to lie. Remember that the best form of influence is the one in which there is no need to use lying as a strategy. Assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't. True listening is quite rare. Most of the times when we are listening to someone, we're not paying close attention to what is exactly being said. We hear things in the light of our own preconceptions and past experiences. And it's necessary for us to think in such a way, because otherwise things may not make sense that easily. Now, this is exactly why the true art of listening is hard. It requires clearing everything in the head and listening with an open mind. It can also require an attitude of acceptance. This can seem somewhat dangerous as we risk our mind being totally influenced and chained by such kind of listening. Another reason for not listening effectively is the hierarchy maneuvers. These are the kind of people that are always trying to quote-unquote up themselves in all social settings. The whole focus is on saying or doing things that improve their social status, so much so that effective listening is compromised. This always backfires as far as social status is concerned, because it makes learning and improvement nearly impossible. Rule number 10. Be precise in your speech. The world is a place where each and everything is in connection with a million other things. For example, your laptop or cell phone that you're watching this video on is not isolated. It is dependent on a number of things for its proper functioning, such as electricity and internet connection. This means that much of the reality is invisible to us most of the times, because seeing it can totally overwhelm us. We do not see objects or things. We see tools, obstacles, and extensions. We see only things that are of benefit to us, and we see them in a way that can help us navigate through life. But life inevitably gets complicated, and there are unforeseen consequences and things fall apart. In such situations, we become confused, because what we had chosen to see have failed us, and now we need solutions. But before moving on to solutions, we first have to specify the problem, and that is the difficult part. We have to be precise in our thinking to specify our problem in this complicated web of reality. Being precise in our thinking enables us to successfully isolate our specific cause or problem from its complexities and see the right connections. As thinking and speaking go hand in hand, you must develop the habit of speaking precisely. This will give you the power to turn chaos into habitable order, and it will give you the clarity to achieve all your goals. Rule number 11. Do not bother children when they are skateboarding. Life is tough, and all the things that make life worth it are hard to obtain and even harder to keep. For this reason, mastery of different things and different skills is something very foundational for living a successful life. But mastery requires danger and pushing the existing limits even further. To learn and grow, we need to go past those limits. And when we do that, we put ourselves in the face of danger and chaos. But we also have the opportunity to go past that danger and turn that chaos back into order. Men especially need to understand that to become stronger and skillful, they will inevitably have to put themselves amidst some form of danger. You see, children are often not very afraid of trying out new things and putting themselves into chaotic situations. This is because childhood to early adolescence is roughly the age where most of the physical and mental growth takes place. That is why children are the most notorious rule breakers. Also, overprotected children do not develop some of the most critical life skills, such as dealing with unpleasant emotions, because of the previously mentioned phenomena. According to Jordan, some of the people who discourage quote-unquote skateboarding do so because of fear or resentment. They're either afraid of tough people or they're the typical overprotective mother who does not want self-sufficient children because they leave her. All of this can be extremely damaging to boys because they are never allowed to exercise their capacity for control. They develop into weaker men as a consequence, which brings a whole host of other serious problems for them as well as for other people, including women. Rule number 12. Pat a cat when you encounter one. By this, Jordan mainly meant that we should make most of the little things in life that can bring short bursts of happiness. Life is short and it's not easy because of the burdens of work, malevolence, and the tragedies that we all inevitably face. Without even noticing it, decades are gone, and when they're gone, people only wish that they had lived more intensely all of those little happy moments. Get yourself into the habit of paying attention to the smaller things in life every now and then. This will not overwhelm you, but in fact it will liberate you temporarily from the complicated burdens of adult reality. Smile at the children you encounter on the street. Do some bird watching. Sing your favorite song without any judgment or awkward feelings. Live as much of those shorter moments as you can.